I used to think my bedtime routine was just a way to unwind, but then one night I looked up and saw his eyes in the doorway. I'm Sophie, 21 years old. And that was the moment every emotional line I'd drawn started to blur inside me. Not because of a wrong action, but because of an unexpected feeling, an emotional hunger, a quiet longing for someone to truly understand me. It turned a peaceful room into the center of a storm, and I'm still not sure if I stepped into emotionally complicated territory or simply wandered into a space of unnamed emotions. Have you ever felt something so real it made you question whether it was even allowed to exist? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear from you. I'm Sophie, 21, and I carry a secret I've never told anyone, not because I'm ashamed, but because it's too personal to explain with the right words. I'm not addicted to stimulants, not alcohol, not pills. What I rely on every night is a moment of stillness, deeply private, a space where I feel connected to myself, a small device resting in the palm of my hand, quiet on the nightstand. To anyone else, it's just another piece of personal tech, but to me, it's a ritual, a way to stay grounded in a world that never stops spinning. It started when I was 18, the year I left my relative's home and began living on my own in a state college apartment. In those long, quiet nights, with the noise outside fading into the distance, I realized silence lets you hear yourself more clearly than anything else. I ordered it after a week of back and forth. When I tried it for the first time, it didn't feel taboo or shameful the way people often make it out to be. It felt freeing, like I was finally understanding my own body, listening to it. It was gentle and powerful at the same time, like having a conversation with myself in a language beyond words. What started once a week became every night, not because I couldn't go without it, but because with it, I slept better. As if after a day of holding myself together for the world, I needed to return to something familiar, something safe. Dim lights, soft jazz playing from a small speaker, the curtains drawn shut, no one else, just me in this little space of my own. I've learned how to soothe myself in ways that bring peace, quiet, private, and familiar. No fear of judgment, no pressure to perform, just me, honest, whole. And yet, afterward, there's always a soft emptiness, like the quiet streaks left on glass after the rain. I often lie there, breathing slow, staring at the ceiling, and wonder, why do I still feel like something's missing? I'm not addicted to the sensation itself. I'm addicted to the connection it brings, the feeling of being seen, even if only by myself. And I wonder, don't we all need a place like that? A small corner of the world where we don't have to try so hard to be liked, understood, or enough. I've never told my friends, definitely not my mom, because I'm afraid that if I say it out loud, I'll lose the peace it brings. But everything started to shift when my mom met someone new. And he moved in with us. His name is Lucas, and somehow it's his presence, quiet, steady, unintrusive, that's made those peaceful nights feel different now. Lucas entered my life gently, but he was far from invisible. I still remember the day he arrived, setting his suitcase down next to the shoe cabinet like it had always been his spot. He didn't say much, just a polite smile, a firm but not too firm handshake, and then he turned to help my mom unload bags of snacks from the car trunk. I didn't like him at first, not because he did anything wrong, but because his presence disrupted my world. Suddenly, cups were moved from their usual place, footsteps echoed through the kitchen earlier than I was used to, and I had to shorten my nighttime me time just in case someone knocked to borrow a phone charger. But Lucas wasn't like any of the men my mom had dated before. He didn't try to impress anyone. He didn't laugh too loud or interrupt conversations. Instead, he was quiet, observant, and knew exactly when to step back. And that ironically made him stand out. A kind of quiet charisma that didn't need to prove itself. And I couldn't help but notice he'd spend weekends fixing things in the basement garage, old shelves, flickering light bulbs, even a wobbly stool my mom was ready to throw out. I'd find reasons to pass by, pretending to grab laundry or take out the trash just to glance at him from a distance. The streaks of silver in his hair, the solid frame, the faded tattoos down his arm. He looked like someone straight out of a late night drama, yet carried an energy that felt oddly calming. I started dreaming about him. Not in a reckless or impulsive way, but in a why is this happening to me kind of way, like something inside me was quietly waking up. At night, lying in bed, the small device I once found comfort in started to lose its magic. It no longer made me feel connected because now my thoughts weren't just turned inward, they were slowly drifting towards someone else. I told myself I was crazy. Lucas had become part of our home through my mom. He was someone I should keep a respectful distance from. But emotions don't always answer to reason. Every time he said good night before turning off the living room light, my heart beat a little faster. Every time he called my name, just a simple, "Sophie, have you seen the scissors?" It somehow sounded different. I hated it, but I couldn't deny that it made me feel more alive than I had in a long time. And what confused me most was the way Lucas looked at me. Not often, not obviously, but in these fleeting moments, when I laughed or when my hand brushed his shoulder while reaching into the drawer, his eyes would shift, not in a way you'd expect. There was something unspoken, hard to name, but present. I began to daydream more, wondering what I'd do if Lucas ever looked at me for just a moment too long. But it never went beyond that. Just thoughts. Just a quiet flutter beneath the surface of a girl standing face to face with something unfamiliar and yet far too close. I started avoiding Lucas's eyes, not because I didn't want to look at him, but because I wasn't sure I could trust myself if I looked for more than a few seconds. My mind felt like a small crack in glass, invisible to others, but I could see it. And with each passing day, that crack spread a little further, threatening to shatter with just one lingering glance, one step too close, one sentence holding too much emotion. One evening, my mom was running late from a hospital meeting. I was in the kitchen making tea when Lucas walked in. The overhead light cast his shadow onto the wall, tall, steady, quiet. I instinctively turned away, heart pounding, but his voice came soft, almost like a breeze. "You okay, Sophie?" I flinched. Sophie. Not kiddo, not sweetheart, not any of the usual stand-in endearments adults use for their partner's daughter. Just my name. Simple, direct, and somehow it made my heartbeat skip. I smiled, trying to hide the heat rising in my face. "I'm fine, just a little tired." Lucas didn't ask anything else. He stood beside me, reached for a mug, and silently poured himself some tea. The moment was so ordinary, it almost made me laugh. Clearly, I was the only one crafting entire storylines in my head, and yet, his hand brushed mine as he reached for the sugar packet. An accident, nothing more, but the jolt that zipped across my skin was undeniable. I pulled away quickly, eyes darting elsewhere, but inside, my thoughts began to rise like a tide. I was no longer a child, and that made the situation feel more complicated, and I knew, deep down, Lucas felt something too, even if neither of us dared say it. From that night on, I found myself trapped in a quiet emotional spiral. I kept asking myself, is it possible to respect boundaries while secretly craving something that crosses them? If a feeling never becomes an action, does that make it any less wrong? And if it is wrong, why does it make me feel so alive? I tried to avoid him, stayed in my room when I knew he was home, wore headphones, even without music playing, just to avoid interaction. But the more I resisted, the more I thought about it, the more I suppressed, the more I wanted to push against the edge. One Sunday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight spilled in through the curtains, lighting up the room in soft gold. I looked at myself in the mirror. Young face, yes, but something in my eyes felt older than 21. Part of me wanted to scream, to erase the growing tension inside me. But another part whispered, just feel it, even if it only lives in your mind. That night, I heard the sound of tools clinking in the basement garage. A soft jazz track played on a Bluetooth speaker, paired with the gentle rhythm of a wrench turning bolts, the occasional tap of a small hammer. I don't know why I went downstairs. I didn't have an excuse. I just wanted to see him. Lucas looked up when I stepped inside, his hands slightly smeared with grease. He chuckled under his breath. Let me guess, you're here to make sure I didn't break anything? I leaned against the doorframe. No, I just feel safer knowing someone's here. We didn't speak for a while after that, but silence sometimes speaks the loudest. It held everything unspoken, everything that couldn't be said, but also couldn't be erased. I left the basement garage shortly after, my thoughts tangled beyond repair. I knew I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't undo. One more step and nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I locked myself in my room. For the first time, I didn't reach for the little device on my nightstand. Because what I craved wasn't mechanical comfort. It was something deeper, emotional, confusing, and hard to understand. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to resist it. The next morning, I was washing dishes in the kitchen when my mom walked in, visibly upbeat. This weekend, I'm going on a 2-day work trip, she said cheerfully. Lucas will be home. Make sure he doesn't survive on instant noodles, okay? She joked, gently squeezing my shoulder and kissing my forehead before heading out. I nodded, keeping my expression calm, but inside, my heart pounded like something inevitable was about to happen. 2 days, just Lucas and me in the house. I wanted to believe I was level-headed, that as long as I kept my distance, everything would be fine. But the moment the door clicked shut behind my mom, that distance between Lucas and me seemed to shrink. Silent, invisible, but suffocating. That night, I came downstairs and found him sitting in the living room, reading. A soft yellow lamp cast light across one side of his face. I moved slowly, stopping at the bottom step. Not tired yet? I asked, trying to sound casual. Lucas looked up and gave a quiet smile. Not really. You? Same. I sat across from him, gripping my teacup a little too tightly. The silence stretched. Then, Lucas slowly closed his book, his voice lower, heavier. Sophie? I know what you've been avoiding. And maybe I've been doing the same. I froze. No one had spoken aloud the tension that had been quietly building between us until now. I thought I could manage it, he continued, but every time I see you, every time you walk into the room, I feel like I'm betraying something. I feel it too, I whispered. I'm not even sure where the line is anymore. The air grew thick around us. In his eyes, I saw raw emotion, no longer just curiosity, but something deeper, torn, real. I'm scared, Lucas, I said. Scared that if we weren't careful, even one misstep could change everything, and there won't be a way back. Lucas looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, slowly, firmly. I'm scared too. If we keep avoiding the truth, we'll only get more lost in what we don't say. He stood up, walked toward me, stopping just close enough for me to feel the heat of his body, yet without touching. Then he spoke like a confession. If you need me to step back, I will, but if you need someone willing to face this with you, I'm here. I looked into his eyes that held hurt, longing, and a restraint so strong it was almost painful. A part of me wanted to run, but another part just wanted to collapse into his chest and let go of everything I'd been holding in. We stood there, saying nothing more, no actions, no lines crossed, but I knew after tonight there would be no pretending this feeling wasn't real. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, my mind looping through the same images. Lucas's eyes, his voice that carried both honesty and hesitation, and the almost non-existent space between us in the living room. No lines had been crossed, not technically, but I knew. We'd acknowledged a tension that couldn't be easily ignored. The next morning, I sat staring into a cup of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. Lucas walked into the kitchen, his eyes carefully avoiding mine. Sophie, he said gently, about last night. I'm sorry if I made you feel unsafe. I looked up, met his gaze. I didn't feel unsafe, Lucas. For the first time in a while, I felt something deeply, and that unsettled me. He exhaled slowly.